Bernard-Henri Lévy is here. He is considered to be France's most prominent contemporary philosopher. He's also an activist whose political views on the wars in Somalia, Kosovo, Afghanistan, and Iraq have shaped the debate that takes place in France and in Europe. He's the author of numerous books, including Barbarism with a Human Face, Sartre, the Philosopher of the 20th Century, as well as the recently published Who Killed Daniel Pearl. I am pleased to have him back on this broadcast as we are from Paris. Welcome.
Well, thank you.
Pleasure to have you here. There is much to talk about, but let me start with this book, which will be out hopefully in America in October. What was it about this awful assassination of this American journalist that made you know you had to go see about it, learn about it, find out about it?
First of all, the very image of this murder. It is not every day that some people, some holy warriors, some jihadists take a Jewish American boy, cut his head, and film it on a video. This is
It was so obscene.
It was so obscene, and it is not so frequent. For me, this image is as important for the beginning of this century as the World Trade Center destruction. This is the two images who shocked me the most in these last years: the Twin Towers and the murder of Daniel Pearl. Thousands of dead on one side, of course, one single dead on the other side, of course, but the obscenity, it is the two sides of the same obscenity. And as soon as I saw this image, I was in Afghanistan with President Karzai, with the companions of Massoud, former Commander Massoud, with me.
Northern Alliance in Afghanistan.
Yes, we saw this image together. And as soon as I saw it, I got that it was a very, very important event, going much further than the charming and great personality of Daniel Pearl himself.
So what did you do?
What I did, I went to Karachi immediately, and I tried to put my feet in the feet of Daniel Pearl. I tried to understand, to do the same path that he did. I tried to be exactly in his line, trying to understand what he understood, trying to go where he went, trying to smell the air he smelt, trying to find, for instance, the room of hotel where he first met his murderer, Hotel Akbar in Rawalpindi.
Who had lured him there because they were going to take him to understand the shoe bomber.
Exactly. He was supposed to be driven to Mr. Gilani, who is the master, the guru of the shoe bomber. And he met his murderer there. It was the place where the two characters met first time. I went there. I spent the night in this very room, in the very bed of this room, trying to understand what happened. And what I tried to do was to understand what he was discovering, what he was about to discover when he was kidnapped and murdered, on which track he was, on which affair he was, on which scoop he was.
But that raises this question. Was it because he was close to finding something that no one wanted him to know that might have had consequences, or was he simply lured in because they knew and they wanted to kill, for example and other reasons, an American reporter?
My idea, I did not know when I began this book, and it is, I wrote this book in a very careful, methodic way, step after step. My conclusion at the end is that he was kidnapped because he was an American and a Jew. And there are countries today in the world where to be an American and to be a Jew is not an identity, is a crime. Is a crime, is a sin. To be American in Pakistan is a sin. To be Jewish in Pakistan is a super sin, is a super fault, is a super crime. He was kidnapped because of that. But I think that he was killed after having been kidnapped, because he was on the verge of discovering something. And I think I have rebuilt all that happened in these terrible 7 days of the custody between he and the jihadist. They were 6 or 7 days together, eating together, sleeping together, chatting, speaking, and so on. And I think that during these days they understood that he was inquiring on some points and on the verge of discovering something which was and which is today in Pakistan and in this area of the world in general forbidden.
What is that?
I cannot say it in so few words. It is I wrote 540 pages to say what it is, but to be very rough and very brief, I have 3 hypotheses. First one, he was discovering the reality of the link of Al-Qaeda with the secret services of a big state member of the anti-terrorist, so-called member of the anti-terrorist alliance, who is Pakistan. First.
He was you believe that he was finding a link between the
ISI and Al-Qaeda.
And Al-Qaeda.
And if not properly Al-Qaeda, the groups who are around Al-Qaeda, who are the nebuleuses around Al-Qaeda, Jaish-e-Mohammed, Sipah-e-Sahaba, Lashkar-e-Toiba, Lashkar-e-Jhangvi, the jihadist groups, which are the cellular, who are linked to Al-Qaeda. First point. Second point, he was inquiring of this Mr. Gilani, to whom he was driven this very terrible day. Who is Gilani? Gilani is, and he was on the verge of discovering it, he is a very specific person in this Al-Qaeda landscape. Not so important as Ben Laden, but in another way, maybe more important. A sort of master of Ben Laden, a sort of
who lived in Karachi or lived in
who lived in Brooklyn in the beginning of the 80s, who created in Brooklyn, in New York, a group who was called Sect Al-Fuqra, was now being transformed itself in Muslims of America, who escaped United States in '93 after the first World Trade Center, and who went in Lahore. This is Mr. Gilani,
right.
A man who is between some activist groups inside America, and the idea being to put some cells of cancer in the body of the enemy, and Pakistan. And he is also, Mr. Gilani, this is what Danny was trying to understand, he is also the man who inspires Ben Laden. Ben Laden is maybe a good man of war, making war, maybe a good mind of finance, but he is not a spiritual mind, and he is not an ideologue. He has very short ideas, and there are some men who have ideas for him. For instance, the master of some madrasas in Karachi, which I visited, and Mr. Gilani. Danny Pearl was discovering this character of Gilani. And third point, I think that he was inquiring on the very sensible point of nuclear weapons of Pakistan. Nuclear weapons.
Being made available to, being offered to, being what? I mean, we all know that Pakistan has nuclear weapons, so what's the discovery?
The discovery could have been, and he was stopped on the process, was actually, he wrote an article which has been published on the 24th of December in Wall Street Journal with Steve Levin. And in this article, he wrote that there were some contacts between a scientist, a Pakistani scientist, Bashiruddin Mahmoud, and Ben Laden. He wrote that on the 24th of Christmas 2001. And the point is to know if this goes further than that. Is it only one scientist who had one contact with the Bin Laden network, or more scientists, more contacts, going to where, and so on?
Okay,
he was inquiring of that. Is there any possibility, is there any desire of Bin Laden to get some nuclear, some dirty weapons, not atomic bomb, but dirty weapons? And is a process of that going on today?
And your answer is?
I have not answered. I think I went a little further, just because he is dead and I am not, and I am still alive. So I went I made a few paces on the same road further, and I think that there are some contacts. I think that there are some laboratories at the border of Afghanistan and Pakistan, and there are some people working on that point on the side of Bin Laden. And my opinion today is that the next step, I hope I say I'm wrong, but the next step of this terrible story of new terrorism could have something to do with nuclear weapons. Of course, it could be the next step, and it is what is sure is that this is the idea of the command of Al Qaeda. This is their idea today.
All right, back to I want to go to terrorism in a moment, but there was the capture of one of Al Qaeda's top officials,
Khalid
Sheikh Mohammed. He is evidently talking. We don't know what he is saying. He's been under constant interrogation. We assume he's outside of Pakistan. There were stories in the United States, and I assume around the world, that he either had claimed credit for being the person that took the knife and killed Daniel
Yes,
Pearl.
I know. There is one man saying that. Maybe he is right, but I don't think so. Robert Baer, a former
CIA operative in Afghanistan.
Yes, and who is now a writer. I know that this is his opinion. I tried to work on this thesis. I went back. It was my fourth trip to Islamabad and Karachi after the arrest of Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. I don't think so. I don't think he did that. I don't think that Danny Pearl was inquiring on this specific point. What is true is that he was killed by a Yemenite. What is true is that he was arrested by Pakistanis, by a group of Pakistanis coming from various...
Who were members of certain cells of terrorist organizations.
Many cells, and one of the peculiarity of this kidnapping is that you have association on this kidnapping of many groups, which is not so frequent in Pakistan. Generally, it is one crime, one group, one kidnapping, one group. In this Daniel Pearl case, this is very bizarre. You have 7 or 8 groups linking their forces on the head of this single man, Danny Pearl. So he was kidnapped by them. He was killed by a Yemenite. This we know that.
By a Yemeni?
Yemeni, yes. Right. The last day of his custody, the owner of the plot, Saud Memon, who is now at large, who has not been arrested, Saud Memon called in the plot 3 Yemenis who came and who made the crime. I don't think that Khalid Sheikh Mohammed is one of these 3 Yemeni. I don't think so.
Well, clearly he's not. I mean, that's not his profile. You were opposed to America's... You applaud America for what it did in Afghanistan, for what it did in Bosnia, for what it did in Kosovo. You have said that the United States has stood strongly in coming down on the side of Muslim people. You also oppose the war against Iraq because you believe the more important war is in Pakistan.
Exactly. I am grateful for what America did in Bosnia, in Kosovo, in Afghanistan. Not only applaud, grateful. I think that without America, all this would not have been done. On Iraq, I think that there has been a mistake of calculation. It was not the right goal. It was not the right la bonne cible.
But even though you came to Sarajevo and you went to a whole range of places you have gone to on behalf of what was being done to other human beings in terms of genocide, ethnic cleansing, you have been one who's prepared to go in at some risk and do something, try to do something, try to lend a voice. But look at the
Iraqi people, of course. What I said about this Iraqi war from the beginning, from the very beginning, I said that it was a war moralement juste et politiquement erroné. Just right on a moral point of view and not on a political point of view. On a moral point of view, of course, to liberate a people, to kill a tyran, a despot, is always good. But I think that if you take the whole ground of the war against terrorism, which is our common aim, you cannot make war against Iraq and being allied to Pakistan. This is a real mistake. I hope that it is not such a big mistake as it was for the American to support in the beginning of the 80s, of the 90s, Taliban's against Massoud, as it was to, even before, in the war against Soviet Union, to support here or there.
Yeah, well, what the United States, that's a whole other discussion. What the United States did was really, whatever they did in Afghanistan was just to drive the Russians out. They made friendships with everybody.
I know.
Bernard-Henri Lévy, this book is called, translated in the French, is Who Killed Daniel Pearl? Yes?
Yeah.
It is fascinating. It is getting lots of attention in France, soon to be in the fall in the United States. We'll continue in just a moment. Stay with us.